getting the facts straight, understanding what a thing is, why it happens, and how we can prevent it in the future are the first steps we should take before figuring out if any consequences should be meted out. Dr. Chrislyn Wood Nicholson. Dr. Wood, by the way, is a poultry specialist and veterinary medical officer with USDA HPAIS and Veterinary Services in District 1 on the East Coast. And we're going to have us a pretty in-depth conversations from the city of rooftops to the suburban backyards. More than 11 million Americans are raising their own chickens, ducks, and geese than ever before. And Dre, by the way, I can say I am a member of that. My wife, who, as you know, is in California, often works with Adorasaurus, who we call Adora, a 12-year-old chicken. And by the way, if a chicken is 12 years old and active and vibrant, as the doctor can tell you, it's a loved chicken. But that being said, those flocks are facing a real threat, avian influenza. It's fast-moving, it's deadly, and it has been detected in all 50 states. And the good doctor is here this morning. We are pleased to welcome Dr. Wood. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Jimmy. Thanks for having me on your show today to talk about defending your flocks from avian influenza.
Thank you very much. Welcome to Road Gang Radio. So let's just kind of set this up at the most simple level. Talk to us about avian influenza, what it is, and what its ramifications are as it moves across the entire country.
Yes. So avian influenza is a respiratory disease of birds caused by influenza type A viruses. The main strain that we're most concerned about is the highly pathogenic avian influenza strain, or HPAI for short. So that strain of the virus is extremely contagious and deadly to domestic poultry. Many wild birds, they can carry the highly pathogenic avian influenza strain and spread it without showing any signs of illness, and they may infect domestic poultry through direct or indirect contact. As you mentioned, for the past 3 years, since February of 2022, we've seen this HPAI virus spread through all of our 50 states, including one U.S. territory. It's affected 174 million birds, a wide range of species, including chickens, turkeys, and geese. Many other birds have been affected. And yeah, we're seeing a lot of people are raising backyard chickens now. There's an estimated amount of 11 million U.S. households with backyard chickens. So we just want everyone to be aware. If you know people who have backyard chickens, and it's important for the biosecurity or prevention practices to be done by both backyard as well as the commercial industry.
We then take the second step, and by the way, some of the, like I said, we actually know that when chickens are being actually raised at home, when they're actually, beloved pets or sources of homegrown protein, people often forget they are, beautiful animals who are loved, and people want to protect that. At the same time, we're talking about a general, widespread possibility of really affecting the economic supply chain. Can you talk a little bit about, and I know this isn't part of your bailiwick, but the economic impact of what this could do to that population, to the population that we deeply don't want affected?
Right. So usually with HPAI, once the birds are infected, usually almost all of the birds die very quickly. So it's a huge devastation. I'll talk a little bit about the clinical signs, what to look for. So the signs are acute mortality that's unexpected. Usually the birds will die over 2 to 3 days. Neurological signs like difficulty walking, ataxia, lethargy, depression, droopy wings, abnormal head position, drop in feed and water consumption, drop in egg production if they are laying eggs. And then sometimes we've seen the presence of sick and dead vultures nearby or that had been in direct contact with the flock. So the virus is very devastating once it gets into the birds. So that's why we're trying to educate people on prevention so they don't have to deal with this.
By the way, I want a couple of things in there that are worth kind of digging into there as well. The acute mortality means that in the blink of an eye, massive populations of birds simply cease to exist on the ground. The second thing is you pointed out the vultures, and this is a great reminder. Vultures play such an important part in so many ecosystems, in regards to being part of an ecosystem that actually gets rid of a lot of carrion, a lot of other disasters. Vultures often stand in the way of other diseases kind of moving forward. If those populations get wiped out, and I'm asking from a place of ignorance, so the vulture doesn't take care of the carrion. Does this affect other animals outside of simply the avian population?
Yeah, that's a good question. Like you said, it is like an ecosystem. The vultures do take care of, deceased animals and carcasses, and that is an ecosystem. So they are important too in that chain. So, yeah, this virus has been very devastating to both the wild birds, many different types of wild birds, ducks, geese, vultures. Many wild birds, can have the virus and are affected by the virus, but it really is devastating as well, even more so to our domestic poultry, both the commercial and small backyard flocks.
I'm going to make one more comment about vultures, then I have a question that actually pivots into where you actually took us. The other thing is, too, guys, think about how devastating this is. Vultures are designed to consume disease. They are designed to consume the worst things you can possibly consume, and if they're going away, that's a real problem. Let's talk, like I said, we talk about the idea of the domestic poultry. And what are things that people can do to indemnify themselves against this? Look, this is in 50 states now. I mean, there are things that, that you guys can do and you guys can track this stuff. But what can individuals do to make a difference here?
Yes, good question. So right now in the period that we're in the fall, the wild birds are migrating and moving. So those wild birds can be carriers of avian influenza. And so that's why we're at an increased risk. So some easy, simple biosecurity steps that people can take. Number one is mainly preventing that direct contact with wild birds, especially ducks and geese and vultures, and their droppings. People can accidentally step in wild bird feces, let's say at a park, somewhere outside, and they can accidentally bring it into their poultry coop. So it's important to keep things clean. We recommend that people have dedicated shoes or footwear or boots that they only wear inside their poultry area, or they clean and disinfect them very well before they go into the coop. Also keeping things clean, the feeders and the waters, keeping them clean on a regular basis, having a covering over the poultry coop, limiting the visitors that come in and out. Only the people who really need to be there should be there. And then again, those people that come in and out, they wear their boots that they're supposed to wear, or their simple footwear that they're cleaning, disinfecting. They're disinfecting their hands as well. And then limiting the areas where the birds are held. We don't want them wandering around to ponds or streams of water, or even after heavy rain, sometimes there's standing areas of water that could attract those wild birds. So we want to limit the area to where they're kept.
Now, the people who actually run the larger farms have an understanding of this, but there are people who are, have not fallen into, but kind of follow their passion to have coops and do a lot of work in regards to producing eggs for farmers markets and all that stuff. He's done a pretty darn good job of explaining the kind of behavior you should engage in. I can't let this go, by the way, because a couple of weeks ago, we have a beautiful fountain in front of our studios here that are surrounded by a massive bird population, including Louisiana herons. Somebody, in an attempt to clean out that fountain, thought the good idea was to use bleach. We, of course, immediately dissuaded of this, and we managed to stop the herons from getting in there. Can you talk a little bit about when people go around the business of disinfecting their areas to make sure that their flock, as you guys say, defend the flock, make sure it's protected? What are some kind of strategies to make sure that you're not making the problem worse by introducing other poisons in an attempt to kind of keep the birds safe?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So there's lots of disinfectants that are effective against avian influenza virus. But as you mentioned, it is important that, the disinfectants be used properly and not cause harm to additional animals. So general rules as far as cleaning and disinfecting, you want to remove the organic material, so the dirt, the debris, the manure, and dispose of it in a bagged way. Wear gloves, to protect yourself. And then, rinse with water to clean the area. And then we always say follow the directions on the label. And as I mentioned, there's many disinfectants that are effective against influenza virus. If you just search disinfectants effective against influenza, there's an EPA website that comes up that will list many, many disinfectants that are effective against, including avian influenza virus. So they use that disinfectant according to the label direction. So most disinfectants need to be diluted. You don't usually use it at full strength. So you can dilute it, follow the label directions. Sometimes it requires a contact time, maybe a 10-minute contact time. And then it's very important afterwards, usually per the label directions, to wash or rinse away the disinfectant. And that's some of the steps for proper cleaning and disinfection.
I'm sure I'm going to get comments a little bit later on in the show on our chat streams, by the way. But as you know, the majority of our listeners are over-the-road truckers, many of whom have farms, many of whom have family farms, many of whom have agriculture and poultry kind of set up to go. So this is a very important conversation. As truck drivers, and like I said, if you don't know the answer to this one, it's fine. But as truck drivers who are driving agricultural products or driving back home to the farm, no matter where they go, what are some of the steps that these men and women can take when they get back to their own farms or when they're doing the hauling of these animals to prevent suddenly opening up a truck where everybody's head is tilted to the side and the chickens have no value and they've had the worst end to a life?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So for those truck drivers, if they have poultry at home, when you go back home and go into your chicken coop, you want to make sure your clothes are clean, you have clean shoes, when you go into that coop, everything is cleaned properly. For people who are actually hauling poultry, it's important to make sure that, they're following, usually if it's for a commercial company, they should be following what their company, has designed for their biosecurity practices. And usually that means, they pick up the birds in clean and disinfected coops. You want to make sure that the coops that they're starting with are cleaned and disinfected properly. Do a walk around the truck, look at the crates, make sure there's no large amounts of feces, wild bird feces or even domestic bird feces that had been left over. It's important to start with clean and disinfected, crates, the trucks each and every time. Then when they load their birds, if they do see any signs of illness in the birds, it's important to report that through the chains that have been kind of defined by their company. And so once they, if there's any sick birds, and then, just really following what their company has recommended.
I can't thank you enough for making the time here. I wanted to give you a chance if there's anything else you wanted to add. Dr. Chrislyn Wood Nicholson is a poultry specialist and veterinary medical officer with USDA APHIS Veterinary Services in District 1 on the East Coast. By the way, to give you a sense of her bona fides, she received her doctorate of veterinary medicine, DVM, from Michigan State University and a master's of public health from the Pennsylvania State University and a BS from the University of Maryland Eastern Shore. She's been doing this for 20 plus years. So she knows of what she speaks. I wanted to give you the last word before you get out of here.
Thanks so much, Jimmy. So if people do see any sick birds, it's important to contact your state veterinarian's office or state veterinary diagnostic lab. USDA does also have a toll-free number, and that number is 866-536-7593. You can call it from anywhere in the country. Also, USDA has lots of really good resources. We have the Defend the Flock campaign. So your listeners can go to USDA.gov, Defend the Flock. There's lots of really good information, videos, biosecurity checklists, even information that's targeted to our youth, because it's important for them also to understand, biosecurity, if you have poultry, and keeping your birds safe. So lots of really good information on our USDA website under Defend the Flock.
Thank you for the fascinating information, the informative information, and delivered impassionately while at the same time, importantly. We can't thank you enough, Dr. Wood. Go have the best of Labor Day weekends.
Thank you. You too.